Hello, young art artist. Welcome to your hydrangea painting class. In front of you, you should have a blank canvas, a larger and smaller brush, a paper towel, a plate just in case you want to mix any of your colors, a light green, a dark green, a white, a red, a brown, and a cup of water. And sorry, I am wearing a hand wrap today. I did fall, so I just wanted to wear it just in case. So sorry if it's a little bit in the way. But let's go ahead and get started on our hydrangea painting. First thing you're going to do is make sure your canvas is long ways. And then go ahead and twirl your two brushes in the cup of water. Get them nice and clean. And then dry them or pat them nicely onto your paper towel. For this painting, you do want to start with the background first and kind of build forward. So we're going to start with our wooden palettes. Go ahead and grab your larger brush of the two and then dip it into your brown paint. And we're going to look at the middle line that we're going to create first. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm not going to make a perfect line. I'm just going to kind of sweep, or I'm just kind of flicking at the end of my brush stroke so I don't have a perfect line for my wooden palettes. And then I'll go back a little bit more, and I'm going to separate these two and these two. So I'm going to go in here and make it into 4 parts. And again, I'm just kind of sweeping on these two. And it doesn't have to be 4 perfectly exact sections, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4 areas. Then I'm just kind of sweeping down with my big brush and go back and kind of touch it up. Once I make those 3 lines, so 1 in the middle and 1 to split that one and 1 to split the other one, I'll go back for a little bit more brown and just gonna sweep some lines between each one, just very randomly. Go in there and just sweep some lines in there to kind of create some texture. Maybe anywhere from 5 to 10 little sweeps in each section, some longer, some shorter, but you're just kind of sweeping down. And then once I'm done, I'm not going to even wash my big brush. I'll just kind of dip it into the white paint, and we're just going to start sweeping some of the white inside each palette space. I don't want to get rid of those 3 long lines that I made at the beginning completely. I still want to kind of see where my palettes separate. So don't completely cover those 3 lines, but you can kind of go over those mini ones that you just made into each little section. And I'm just kind of sweeping down in an up and down motion. And sweeping is just like flicking your brush to where you get those feathery ends. So I'm going to go inside this little section. Kind of looks like the second one over. You can start with the first one, it doesn't matter. Then I'll tap a little bit of water, tap on my paper towel, and go over it. So I've covered a lot of it with my white paint, but then I just wanted to add water to my big brush to kind of get my paint moving a little bit more. That water is going to kind of help move your paint and smooth it out. You don't want any bumpy lines. And if you feel like it's too dark, maybe let it dry for a minute, and then you can go back over it to kind of brighten it up with more white. But you want it to be a nice light brown. And again, don't completely lose those 2 lines. All right. And then I'm going to go to more white, and I'll work at a different section. Let's go to this one, to the right of it. Again, you can kind of sweep over those lines that you made previously. Add water to your brush to kind of help that white paint move a little bit more, and you can add more white. So again, I'm just moving in the up and down motion, not completely covering this line to the left and to the right. You still want to see where those palettes separate, and you're just sweeping with your big brush up and down. I'm going over those little mini lines that I made earlier between each palette. I'm still able to see where each of my palettes separate. I can always go back. Make sure I have good coverage. None of that canvas peeking through. And then same thing with your 3rd section and your 4th section. You'll go back to more white. Just kind of go over those mini lines. And it looks like my brown has really dried, so I can go back to more brown on my big brush. It still has some white in it. Just gonna add some sweeps going up and down. And again, if it got too dark, let it dry and then go over it with a little bit more white to brighten it up. So white, don't lose that line completely, and just kind of sweeping up and down. Add water, tap it on your paper towel, and then go over it. I want to make sure I tap it on my paper towel before I go over onto my canvas so it's not too wet. I don't want my paint to get too wet. And again, be sure everything looks nice and smooth. You don't want any bumps of paint on there. So 1, 2, 3 sections, and then go on to your last section. And I'm going to go back with my big brush. I haven't cleaned my brush yet. I'm going to go over those little mini lines that I made. Add water. And I feel like I do want to get this one a little bit darker too. So I'll go back to a little bit more brown. Get into this little last section of my palette. Just kind of sweeping up and down with my brush. It is the artist's choice, but I do always like to kind of bring everything to the bottom of my canvas, to the left and to the right. I'm not really worried about those darker lines, but I do want to bring this lighter brown that I'm creating to the bottom, to the left and to the right of my canvas. I just feel like it just always looks better if you decide to hang this on the wall. You can always go back to more brown. Just kind of continue on that lighter brown and white on the sides and on the top. Up and down, up and down. And then the very top. Up and down. You can add water to help move your paint a little bit better. See the 4 little sections. Once I'm done, I'm still not going to clean my brush, but I can go in there and add a little bit more brown, tap it on my paper towel so I'm almost working with a little bit of a drier brush, and I can go back in there and just kind of sweep. I don't want to fully push down. I want to create those streakier, feathery lines. Brown, tap, tap, tap. I'm going to go in there and find those sections maybe a little bit more. If you got too much brown on there, you can go back to your white. And I do want to go in there and just add more streaks between each palette space, here and there. You're welcome to go back to your white if you want to. Just kind of get it, that background, a little bit more details. I can go in there with brown and white, just sweeping up and down. If you wanted to add water to help them kind of work together a little bit better, now that they're dry, you want to maybe wake them up a little bit more with more water. So I have my 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. You can even create those little knots in the wood. So you can add a little bit of brown, tap it on your paper towel. And let's say maybe the third one over, I'm gonna kind of make a long parenthesis shape. Maybe a little bit more brown, tap, tap, tap. Come on the other side, bring it up kind of close, another kind of parenthesis shape. And you can go inside and make those parenthesis shapes a little bit smaller. Maybe I want to do another one. Let's do one down here. So a parenthesis shape, another parenthesis shape, and then come in a little bit more. Make a smaller version. You can do, 2, 3. So the left side of the parentheses, the right, and then just kind of bring it in a little bit tighter. Those. You can create them wherever you want. Again, if you don't like them, you can let them dry for a moment and just kind of go back over it with white to kind of white it out. Kind of get this background exactly how you want it before you build any of your greenery or your flowers on top. But here's our background. I am going to give it a couple minutes to dry. So while I'm speaking, I'm letting my background dry before I build anything on top. And while it's drying, I'm also washing and drying my larger brush. So again, sweeps, those 3 lines that I made, one in the middle, one on the left, one on the right. My 4 palette sections, adding some sweeps between them, adding white, adding water, and then going in there and making the little knots on my palettes of wood. Letting it dry for a couple minutes to where it doesn't look so shiny anymore, and then I'm building on top. I am going to go back to my larger brush. Again, be sure it's nice and dry and your background is nice and dry. It's not so shiny. I'm going to start with my dark green for my greenery, and I'm going to start with these little leaf shapes down here. Your leaf shapes are going to be going a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, mostly staying on this bottom area. What I'm going to do is take my darker green with my larger brush and just kind of make these kind of like football shapes or eye shapes. I'll make some going to the left, some pointing to the right. Again, it's kind of like that parentheses shape too, to the left, to the right. And I'm just outlining kind of where I want them to sit, not too much higher than this point right here. I want to get it nice and full. Some can be going a little bit shorter, some a little bit longer, but all I'm doing is creating these football shapes. And if you're not here yet, and if you're still working on the background, you're welcome to pause me for a moment and kind of get back to this step, or join us later for this step. But again, kind of like a football shape or an eye shape, you have your parentheses, and there's a point on the bottom and a point on the top. And I'm going to get it nice and full. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if you want to have 10 of those, you can start building your 10. Once I'm done with my 10, 10 to 12 I think is a good number. Again, be sure they're kind of facing different directions, some a little bit lower, some higher. Then you can go inside of each one and just kind of sweep your colors. I'm going to fully fill in these colors. And I like giving these 2 coats, which means I paint at once by sweeping inside each one by just kind of flicking my brush. If you lose a shape, you can always go back and get it again by outlining the outside. So I'm going to paint them all once, all dark green, by just kind of sweeping my brush. And then I'm going to go back and give it a nice second coat, which means I'll kind of start from the beginning, maybe even giving it a minute or 2 to dry, a little bit longer than I did. I'll go back and give it a second coat, so it's a little bit more solid. You don't see as much of the background. Once I'm done with that, I'm not going to clean my brush. So I've made my 10 shapes and I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm just going to go directly to that light green. And mostly on the left side of these leaves where the sun's hitting it a little bit more, I'm going to just maybe sweep in that kind of curvy shape. Again, mostly on the left side, a little bit of a curve. Excuse me. Sorry, this is unwrapping. A little bit of a curve to your brush, not too much on there. If you got too much of the lighter green, you can let it dry and go back to your darker green. But all I'm doing is just kind of sweeping this lighter green on top. Be sure it's nice and flat on there. You don't want big bumps, like so. So my dark green, and I have my dark green working with my lighter green, mostly on the left side, a little bit of a curve to my big brush. And then I'm just going to go in there and just start adding more light green. I am going to create more of those shapes, kind of like the pointy shapes, but I'm going to use it as a way to kind of fill up the empty spaces between each one. So whatever, just kind of peeking through, you won't see the whole shape sometimes, or you can build some on top where you do see that shape a little bit more. You can also have some kind of peeking in the background to where you don't have to draw the whole thing. It's just kind of going in between each one. And again, be sure some are pointing to the right, some are pointing to the left. You can have some a little bit closer up, some further back. So I've gone in there and just kind of built some lighter greens. And it's okay if it's still kind of touching the darker greens. I've kind of filled up that space a little bit more. Maybe again 10 or 12 of these shapes. Be sure they're nice and rounded. And then you can go back with more light green and just start filling them in. Be sure you're staying inside each of those shapes and not going too much on top of the other ones. You want to slowly but surely fill in all this lower space. And if you lost your shape, you can always go back at more light green and just kind of outline it to where you can see it a little bit more. You don't want to lose that football shape. You want to kind of make sure it's still there. Kind of curving my brush a little bit with the shape, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. And you can go back and give these a second coat, which means you let them dry and then go back over them again to kind of give it a little bit more coverage. Oh, beautiful. If you wanted to go back with the dark green, be sure to wash and dry your brush and just kind of go over there and give that dark green another coat. You can go back and forth and kind of fix it up or clean it up a little bit more if you'd like. I just kind of cleaned my brush and went back to my dark green now that it's a little bit more dry and give it another coat. So you have those bottom layers of your plant, so where it's closer to the ground. Again, be sure you didn't lose those football shapes. You can always go back and outline them in the color that you need. Whenever you're done, you're going to start building higher with your greenery. So I'm actually just going to wash and dry my big brush and put it off to the side. I am going to start with this petal this leaf on the left side, small brush, dark green. I'm just gonna build this one right here, like so. And I'm gonna go in there and just kind of paint it all dark green. So now I'm building high, but I'm using my smaller brush. I'm gonna go back to my dark green and I'm gonna make this stem that is a little bit over to the right. So I've made this kind of football shape. It's kind of hanging over the sides so you can't completely see it, but it's nice and pointy. All of the dark green. Oops. I'm going to come a little bit over to the right, maybe after this first little line. I'm going to create a stem with my dark leaf. It's going to have a little bit of a curve to it. And I'm going to break it off almost like a letter Y. I'm going to come up a little bit higher. And this is all with my dark green. And I'm going to curve a little bit like so. And remember, the harder you push on the brush, the thicker the line becomes. So if you want thin lines, just be on the tippy toes. And then this one does also have a couple leaves. So I do have like this football shape down here. It's a smaller one. I'm only using dark green at this point. And I'm going to come up a little bit higher on the left side. They're at a diagonal. I have this darker green. And the right side, I'm going to have this darker green football shape. And they're definitely smaller than these ones down here. I'm going to touch this up. All right. So again, all dark green. I'm going to have one more stem kind of coming up here to the right. It's definitely going to be on that second half, maybe closer to this line here on the right. And I'm going to start on the ground and I'm going to curve a little bit to the right and I'm going to come in on the left. So kind of like that shape a little bit. And then there are two petals, again, just dark green. I'm going to go on the right side. Right, that football shape. And then on the right side, maybe a little bit lower down. That football shape too, where it's kind of pointy on the outsides. All dark green, all dark green. Small brush only. If you lost the shape, you can go back in there. Without cleaning my brush, let me touch this up just a little bit. Without cleaning my brush, I am going to go back to the light green and create some light green kind of sitting on top of each of the leaves. Just kind of sweeping some more on the left side of each leaf where it's kind of hitting the sun a little bit more. And you can even add some sweeps of light green on the stems. Especially if you made your stems too thick, you can always go on top of it with some really thin green sweeps. You can be working right in the middle or to the left. That kind of brings your eye in if you sweep some of your green lines in the middle, so the stem doesn't seem as thick. Again, for this one too, I am going to add some sweeps of green, maybe on the left side, and then on the left side of this one, just sweeping my brush, just little flicks with my brush. Then I can even add some light green little bit on the left side. And if you want to make your stems look thinner, you can work that light green a little bit more in the middle so it brings your eye in just a little bit more. There you go. Go back and touch these up. Maybe get some of the shapes back a little bit more by making them a little bit more pointy. And before you move on to your flowers, if you want to go back and give anything another coat, if you want to go back, make sure it all looks nice and clean. I always do with this one. I just feel like going back and touching things up does kind of help. So I'm going to go back, get some of my shapes back a little bit more. So don't feel like you have to move on right away. But before you do put your flowers on, you do want to make sure all this green is nice and dry and it doesn't look shiny. So it does, your pretty pink flowers don't blend in with the greens. It'll get muddy. Oops, sorry. So I'm just going back to my dark greens and just kind of touching them up a little bit. I just feel like a second coat, even a third coat, makes a huge difference. You can use your smaller brush for these ones up here and your larger ones for down there. But if you feel comfortable using your big or your small more than the other, you're welcome to kind of switch back and forth how you need it to be. Second coat again is always so much better. Just cleans it up so nice. Gets into those spaces that you might have missed the first time around. Make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush. It's dry now, so you can kind of build on top of it rather than it moving every time you try to touch it up. Because if it's still wet, it just keeps moving and moving, and sometimes you just want to build on top of it. It can get kind of frustrating. So some drying time always helps. So while we were like working on that top part, the bottom part was kind of drying a little bit more. My smaller one, go back between my dark green and light green. Now that I have everything laid out, I can go back and kind of touch it up. Again, before you put your flowers on top, you do want to make sure all your pretty greens are nice and dry. I'm just kind of using my water as a way to kind of smooth things out, move them around a little bit better. If you lost the shape of your leaves, just go back and outline them in the green that you need. All right, beautiful. Go back a little. All right. Perfect. And before we lay our flowers on top, again, be sure everything is nice and dry. Everything is nice and full on the bottom with your greenery. Nice and clean, and then you can go ahead and wash and dry your big brush. You want to really get that big brush nice and clean. You can even wrap it with your paper towel to get all that green off of there. And again, be sure it's really clean before you start making your flowers. And again, be sure that it's not shiny. For our hydrangea painting, our hydrangeas are nice and round, and they go from dark pink to light pink. The top part is definitely the lightest pink, sometimes even at white, because that's where the sun is hitting it the most, and underneath where it's not seeing as much light, it's a little bit darker. So we'll start with the bottom parts, being sure that we kind of keep that nice round shape to each one of our flowers, and then go back and add more and more white to our pink as we're building our flowers higher and higher up. So once this is dry, you do want to get a scoop of red with your big brush. Ooh, that's a lot of red. Find a nice clean area of on your plate. You're gonna get a scoop of white and get a nice kind of darker pink. Nice dark pink, something close to this. maybe just a tad more white. So you want to get a nice darker pink, because remember, you are getting lighter and lighter, almost like we're doing an ombre when we go from dark to light with these flowers. So you want a nice dark pink. And I'm just mixing with my big brush. Just a little bit lighter maybe. That looks good. And I did probably like 3 scoops of white, but you want a nice darker pink like so. I wipe off the sides of my big brush once I'm done mixing. Sometimes when I mix, I just get big clumps of paint on my big brush, so I just wipe it off. And then I'm going to start building my flowers. Again, avoid any shiny spots. I am going to build my first flower over here. And again, it's going to be nice and round. I have my nice dark pink. I'm going to make almost a U shape, but I'm also going to be jumping with my brush. So I'm going to make a U shape like so, but I'm just jumping up and down with my brush. And look at the size of that, the bottom part of your hydrangea. It's not too big. You want to make sure you don't go too big, but again, it's a little bit of a curve, almost like a smiley face even, but I'm just jumping up and down with my big brush like a trampoline. While I have this dark pink on my big brush, I'll just kind of continue on finding those other areas of flowers. So on the top of this one, again, I'm kind of making a U shape. I'm coming up a little bit higher too, so I don't forget to build this middle part. Always go back for more. Just kind of jumping. So there's my second flower. Go back and work on another bottom area since I have this dark pink. Build out. So the top of this stem, kind of jumping up and down. Kind of building that U shape and then filling it in a little bit more. Like a trampoline, just kind of jumping up and down. Again, look at the size of those flowers. You don't want to get too big too fast. We're working on a smaller canvas, so you want to kind of be jumping up and down like this and just kind of going in there and filling up a little bit more. And then I am going to make a couple more flowers just kind of off on the side. I'm going to make this one down here, lower to the right above these greens. Again, just kind of working off the sides, coming up almost like that smiley face. I'll do another one down here, jumping with my brush, and working off the sides, coming up a little bit. I'll do one more. Do another one up here. Jumping up and down, curving it a little bit to the left. So I have all those areas we're going to start building up with my hydrangeas. So they all kind of have that curve, but I did come up and fill them up a little bit more, closer to the middle. So be sure they're all kind of rounding out. You don't want any of these to be straight on the bottom. You want them to be curvy, little smiley face. There you go. I'm not going to clean my brush. I am going to add a scoop of white to that mix. So I have like my medium area, which is more in the middle of my flower. So I'm going to take a scoop of white, mix it, and I'm going to wipe off the side. So I'm getting lighter with my pink. And if you feel like you want to go even lighter than 1 scoop of pink, you're welcome to do so. But remember, you do want the top part to be its lightest. We're going to do more of a lighter pink on the very top. But this is more in the middle. I just grabbed another scoop, added it to my mix, and then wiped off the side once I was done mixing it. And I'll kind of overlap a little bit on the pink that I already made. I'm going to come up. I'm still just kind of bouncing with my brush. So I'm kind of filling up the middle area now. I'll go back for more. And I'll overlap over the previous pink a little bit, and I'm coming up and rounding it out a little bit. I'll go back for more. I'm going to overlap over my previous pink and come up, and just, again, be sure you're kind of coming in on the sides to have nice rounder hydrangeas, like so. Perfect. And you're coming in on the left side and the right side, very circular shapes. More of that light pink mix. I'm gonna overlap. Maybe I'll add a little bit more. Need a little bit more of a mix. I'm gonna overlap over my previous pink, so it's kind of like my medium. And then I'm gonna come up a little bit on the left side and on the right side, making sure I keep that nice rounded shape, like so. And then I'll go back to more of my mix. If you need to make more, you can. Just be sure it's lighter than the first pink you made. Overlap over my previous pink a little bit, and I'm gonna come up and be sure it's curving in to make a nice round shape. And then same with that last one, I'm gonna overlap a little bit my medium pink, and I'm gonna come up. Again, I'm just jumping with my brush to kind of create that texture. Coming up and in. Again, that smiley face shape. I want all my hydrangeas to be nice and round, and I'm just jumping up and down. Once I'm done kind of creating that middle lighter area, I do want to get my pink really, really light. So I'm going to go back and grab some nice big scoops and get a really nice light pink. It's almost like a baby kind of pink. Definitely lighter than your previous pink. And then I'm going to wipe off the side so I don't have any big chunks of paint after I'm done mixing. Still with my big brush, I haven't washed it off yet. And same idea, but now I want to really round out the top. I'm going to go over my previous pink. I'm going to work my way up. Make sure the top part is nice and rounded. So a nice rounded area. Work out a little bit too. So there's my first hydrangea. Cute. And then I'll go back with more of my light pink mix. Let's go to this one. I'm going to overlap over my medium pink, and I'm going to kind of come up. I'm just going to be jumping, being sure I kind of keep that nice shape. Then I'll go back for more. Overlap over my previous pink, and I'll round it out. And I can go in there and just kind of fill it in a little bit more. So you kind of have your darker, your medium, and your light pink working all together. And you're always overlapping over the previous color. So you have a blending point where they're working together before they kind of go off on their own and become their own pink shade or tint. We're using our white, so we're just kind of tinting our pink, making it lighter. You can always go back and touch it up. If you really need to go back to any of your other pinks, just make more of a mix. Be sure you're rounding it out. Be sure one pink is going over the next pink. Make a little bit more. If you need to go back and give it another coat, I would probably let this dry for a little bit longer and go back. But all I'm doing is just kind of making sure it's all nice and rounded on top, almost like that rainbowy kind of feel, where it's a curved arch, like so. Before I am done, I'm gonna wipe off my brush. So I have my dark, medium, light for all of my flowers. I am gonna wipe off my brush, not wash it, just gonna wipe off most of it on my paper towel, and I'll go to more of a white. So just white, pat it off so there's not too much on there. And I can go back in there and just mostly on the top part, just gonna push down on my brush and create some extra light areas where the sun might be hitting it a little bit more. So I added white, patted it off on my paper towel, and kind of working more on the top part. I'm gonna create my lightest areas of white. If it's blending in too much with your pink, let your pink dry for a little bit longer, and then you can work your white on top a little bit more once it's a little bit more dry, so it's not mixing as much with your pink. And all my flowers are just kind of, you know, face to the left, so I might want to add a bit more on the left side where it's hitting the sun a little bit more. And I would probably let this one dry a little bit more in real time. If I wasn't in real time, I would probably pause the video, let it dry, and then go back with a little bit more white and pink so it doesn't blend in with my green as much, because it looks like that green is still pretty wet. But there you go, your beautiful hydrangea painting. You're welcome to go back, touch things up. You're welcome to go back to your pinks and touch those up as well. But you're all set. Great job, everyone. Have a great day. Love, Yang and Art.